Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome back to We the Podcast, a show dedicated to slowing down the headlines, stripping away the slogans, and examining what the Constitution actually says and why it was written the way it is. There are moments in a nation's history when something fundamental changes, and in the United States, it is not immune to them. Sometimes those moments arrive loud and fast. The Civil War tore the country apart in fire and blood, forcing constitutional questions to be answered all at once. Other times, changes come slowly, quietly, through procedure, through policy, behind closed doors, outside of the headlines, while most people assume nothing fundamental is changing. Both paths reshape a nation. One shocks the system, and the other slowly erodes it. Tonight, we are going to speak about a silent threat to our constitutional republic, one that is not being discussed nearly as much as it should be. Last week, the Virginia state legislature passed legislation committing all of Virginia's electoral votes to the winner of the national popular vote, regardless of how Virginians themselves vote. The Virginia House followed suit and sent the legislation to the governor, who is expected to sign it into law. And Virginia is not alone. Across the country, states have been joining an agreement designed to guarantee the presidency to the winner of the national popular vote once enough states sign on. This may at first glance not look like too serious of a topic. However, they are getting dangerously close to destroying the Federalist Republican system of government that we have enjoyed for nearly 250 years. If successful, this effort could fundamentally change how we elect a president without amending the Constitution. And that is not a minor procedural adjustment. That is structural transformation. Because the United States was never designed to be a pure democracy, it was designed to be a constitutional republic, one that divides power, balances interests, and prevents temporary passions from overwhelming permanent safeguards. The Electoral College is not an accident. It is one of those safeguards. So welcome again to We the Podcast. If you value long-form constitutional conversations like this, please like this episode, subscribe to the channel, and share it to someone else who cares about the structure of our government. And if you'd like to support the channel and go deeper into the themes, my book, The Last Republican, Thomas Massie and the Death of a Party, explores how constitutional limits are being eroded across the political system, and you can find the link in the description. Tonight isn't about party politics. It isn't about who wins the next election. It's about whether the structure that has preserved this republic for more than 2 centuries continues to stand. And tonight, I have a special guest joining me for this discussion. John Crawford is the founder of Keep Our 50 States, an organization focused on preserving the Electoral College and opposing the national popular vote movement. Over the years, John has testified in person before state legislatures, provided video testimony in others, and submitted written testimony to roughly 20 additional legislatures, as this issue has moved state by state. He has spoken directly with well over 100 lawmakers and worked to mobilize constituents groups when national popular vote legislation is introduced. He has also worked alongside leaders in this fight, including Trent England and the team at Save Our States, as well as other scholars and advocates who have been resisting this effort nationally. While the National Popular Vote campaign is backed by significant funding and professional lobbying operations, much of the opposition has been grassroots, and John has been a consistent voice in that resistance. You can learn more about his work at keepour50states.org and through their Facebook group. The links are in the description. So, John, welcome to the podcast. Oh, 1 second. There you go. Now, welcome to the podcast. I forgot to unmute you.
Okay. Oh, hey, no worries. That's a button my wife would love to have. So, thank you for having me on, Jesse, and congratulations and best luck to you for We the Podcast. I'm excited about it. This is a topic that's sorely needed in this country. So, way to go.
Yeah, I'm very happy to get this started. I started it this year, and so far I've had nothing but good feedback. So hopefully it continues to grow and continues to get the feedback. So, how about we start off? Give me a little bit of a background for yourself and Keep Our 50 States. Tell us about yourself, what led you to found Keep Our 50 States, and when did you realize that this was something important enough that required sustained involvement?
Sure. Well, and hey, your opening monologue was absolutely spot on, right on the bullseye. It's a great description. I thought, hey, there's hardly anything left to talk about because you really did nail it. But actually, where I first got wind of it was I was the president and CEO of our local Chamber of Commerce. And this was back, I did that for a little over 13 years. And I want to say it was December of 2008, and I got a phone call from one of my members, and she just said, "So what the heck are our state reps doing? Voting to elect the president by national popular vote?" And I said, "No, they aren't doing that." And she goes, "No, they are. I just saw it." I said, "No, they're not. They can't. It can't be." And turns out I was wrong. It turns out NPV had snuck into NPV, being National Popular Vote lobbying group, had snuck in literally into Michigan's legislature, into the House of Representatives. And during Michigan has a lame duck session. Michigan's one of 4 states that has a full-time legislature. So these guys get elected. Well, they're in for 2 years. They get full-time salaries and expense accounts and offices and office staff and so on and so forth. And for a 2-year session, so like the end of this year, the end of 2026, between November and December 31st, they're in office. And that's when all of the junk legislature gets passed. And that's when I got this phone call. It was about the 8th of December, I think it was, in 2008. And all these bills are just flying around on the floor of the House. And it passed the House with like 75 or 80% of the vote. And
Wow.
they sent it over to the Senate, and it just died in the Senate only because the Senate couldn't get to it. And so later on, I wound up, picking up the phone. And back then, I worked with all the lawmakers from West Michigan at that point, and just started calling my guys over there. So, what the heck are you doing? And they said, "What are you talking about?" And they said, "Oh, that's just an administrative thing. It's going to really clean up the way we elect the president. It's going to make it a lot easier." And I go, "No, it's not." And anyway, so the Michigan House passed the bill. The Michigan Senate didn't take it up, and then it died on December 31st. And anyway, so I was just trying to explain to them. I said, the people have never elected the president. There's never been a national popular decision for anything in the United States ever. The people of the United States have never made any decision on any issue at any time, peace, war, or in economic upturns or depressions, or Democrats in office, Republicans. There is no such thing as a national popular vote, and the people have never elected the president. And they're all going, "What? No, that's not right." And then I just realized that everybody has been getting it wrong, and I had a lot of stuff that was wrong myself. And so I wound up starting to pick up some books. I got a book by Tara Ross. Tara has become a very, very good friend of mine, and I wound up getting on the phone with her in January of about 2009. She referred me to Trent England. Tara's down in Dallas. At that point, Trent was up in Washington State. So I wound up having these guys on the phone. They're sending me books. Tara sent me a case of books that I started handing out to the lawmakers. And that's kind of how I wound up getting into it. But the main message is the way the United States is set up is just a phenomenally fascinating system of checks and balances. And why they did that is absolutely amazing, that they did it. It was the world's first exercise in real self-governance, and all of their concerns came out during the Constitutional Convention.
Yeah.
And they just fought this Revolutionary War, 8-year-long bloody war to throw off a tyrant that was 3,000 miles away. But what was left over wasn't working. The Articles of Confederation there simply wasn't strong enough. And each of those 13 states realized that, if we hang separately like we're doing, we're all going to get picked off by either France or Spain or Britain. And so we're going to have to unite if we have any chance of staying together. So they decided to have a constitutional convention in 1787. And during all that discussion and everything, overwhelming all the time after time after time, their concern was, we're going to create another tyranny. We're going to create this government, this national government, and we don't want it to be a national government. And one delegate allegedly stood up and said, we just got rid of a tyrant 3,000 miles away. Why do I want 1,000 tyrants now 3 miles away? And so and James Madison, if you haven't read the Federalist Papers, read the Federalist Papers. They're great. And the Anti-Federalist Papers, just as important. Yep. That debate between those two sides over this are phenomenal. But in Federalist 51, Madison is very, very eloquent. And that's where he says, if angels were, how do you put it? If men were angels, no government would be necessary. Wouldn't have to set this up. If angels were to govern men, then no constraints or rules placed on the government would be necessary. The problem we have here is we have to create a government that has some authority, that has some enforcement power, that can raise money, that can raise an army, that can fight back, that can enforce laws. But simultaneously, what we have to do is design this government so that it checks itself, so that it doesn't become a tyranny. And so part of that is they came up with the federal system. The states were the ones that created the federal government. The federal government did not create the federal government. So it's the states collectively are the boss, and the states basically elect the president of the United States. So the short elevator version is, I'm just trying to help people realize that the president of the United States is elected by the states. And not the population.
Yep. So with that, yeah. So with that being said, you being on the front lines for years, before we actually examine what the challenge is, it's important for the people to understand what's being defended, so that they can understand why we're challenging the national popular vote. Many Americans, like you mentioned, they hear the term Electoral College, but they don't truly know how it works. At a basic level, what is the Electoral College, and how does it function within our federal system?
Great question. And man, if this is the only point we get across with this broadcast here, then this thing's a win. The thing, if I can back up a little bit to that 1787 convention they had, 12 states out of the 13 sent delegations to Philadelphia, and the state legislatures each voted to send a delegation to say, we've got to redo these Articles of Confederation to make the federal government stronger, work better. Okay, so they get in there and they said, well, we've always had a Congress under the Articles of Confederation. They didn't have anything else. They only had a Congress. They didn't
Yeah.
have any way to enforce the law. They didn't have any courts. The Congress could say we're going to impose a tax on the people, but um, the, all of the states, all 13 of the states had to agree to it. Everything had to pass 13-0. Well, Rhode Island didn't want to have any federal government set up at all. So Rhode Island decided to stay home, thinking that under Articles of Confederation, which we've all signed on to, we vote no, we're not going to vote yes. So that kills the whole thing. So they thought just by staying home, they were going to kill the Constitution. So they get down there in May of 1787, and they go through about the 25th of September for 4 months, hottest month on record for a long, long time. And they kept bringing up, we need more than a Congress. Well, what do you need? Well, we need an executive. We're going to have this Congress, but we got to, some teeth behind whatever Congress comes up with. Enforcement mechanism, tax collecting mechanism. We're going to have a Navy, we can have an Army, we can have a post office, whatever it is that we're going to do, but somebody's got to actually run that. But they could never quite decide during those 4 months what that was going to look like. At one point, they had a serious proposal for a couple of days to have 3 different presidents, and then they scrubbed that, so that's not workable. Then they. What?
Real quick, I was going to bring that up in the next segment because I listened to the other podcast that you were on, and for those who have known me over the years, they know that I am a complete nerd for the Constitution. So when I heard you mention the proposal of 3 presidents, or for example, the governors electing the president, I nerded out when I heard you say that, because you are one of now only 4 people that I knew in the entire country that knew that before speaking to me.
and that's all stuff that I've learned after I got involved with this. I mean, everything that I'm saying here today is stuff that I've picked up and learned over the last, 15, 18 years or whatever. But
yeah.
So yeah, they had all different kinds of proposals, but they could just never get anyone across the line. And so they came up with a whole bunch of different ideas about what this executive is supposed to do, what kind of authority is going to have. One thing that they all wanted was an executive that was equal to the Congress. They wanted the executive to be able to check the Congress. They wanted. They then came up with a judiciary. We're going to have a court system in case that states get into disputes with each other. In case these laws, we need the courts to decide if Congress passes a law and they exceed the Constitution. We want the court to come in and say, no, you guys can't pass that law because it exceeds the Constitution. You don't have that authority. And so the judiciary was kind of an easier piece of that whole thing. They kept coming back. There were 30 different proposals about the presidency. They didn't even call it the presidency until after they got done. George Washington is the one who came up with that title. They were referring to it during the convention as chief magistrate. And so they started to finally come up with, we're going to have one person, got to be one guy. And whatever the bills are that go through Congress have to be signed by the president. And if he doesn't sign it, that's the check against the Congress.
Yeah.
Somebody says, well, no, but Congress passed a 2/3 override vote. So they agreed to that. And so then they said, okay, so we're going to have one president, and these are some of his duties, et cetera. And he's going to be commander in chief of the military, et cetera. He's going to be the guy that enforces these laws. That's going to give the federal government our teeth and our authority and our power. But there's, the court can check him, the states can check him, the Congress can check him. So we're putting this whole thing together to keep everybody from becoming tyrannical. So then it says, okay, well, who gets to be president? I mean, how are we going to figure this out? And that they started throwing ideas. They had all kinds of ideas. They said, well, I'll tell you what, we'll have Congress pick them. Piece of cake. So the Congress will pick no. They don't want to do that. That's a parliamentary system. Canada has parliament. Germany has parliament. Israel has a parliament. Great Britain has a parliament. And that's where the legislative branch chooses the executive. Well, they rejected that because they said, we just said we want a strong executive. So if you have the legislature pick the executive, now you've got him beholding to Congress. And we don't want that. We need this strong check against Congress. So they voted that down. And then they said, well, let's have the people do it. No, they voted that down. They get up there and they said, the people are busy living their lives. They're farming their farms and they're trapping their traps and, making their horseshoes and whatever it is that they do. They're too busy. That one delegate was quoted as saying in the minutes, says, "Wait, you want arguably the most strongest position in the land in this federal government, who's got the most responsibilities, who goes out and represents all of our states to all the other countries in the world, negotiates all of our treaties, and you want that decision made by the people who know the least about that job and they know the least about the qualifications of the candidate?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense." And all the delegates went, "Yeah, that's pretty stupid, isn't it?" It wasn't so much they didn't trust them. They just knew that the population simply didn't know enough to make the hire, So they tubed that. Okay, let's have all the governors do it. Well, then they said this, this executive could be beholden to the governors. Got a couple big state governors. They can throw their weight around. The governors themselves all had different powers. Some of the governors were very weak governors. Some of them were very strong governors. They got to office in different ways. They considered that, debated it. They threw that out. They said, okay, let's have all the state legislatures do it. They didn't like that idea. So they kept going back and forth. The very last thing that they came up with was about 2 days before they adjourned. One other footnote. Let me digress here if I've got a minute. Right around the 4th of July, about the 1st of July, something like that, the delegates all started packing their bags and they're going home. And they said, this ain't going to work. We can't agree. We've agreed on Congress. We've agreed a little bit about an executive, but we just can't agree on anything. We give up. We're tired. We're going home. And there's not going to be a constitution. And that's when Roger Sherman from Connecticut comes in and he goes, guys, you got the cabs out front. I see all your bags are over here. You've checked out of your hotels. You got the bags lined up by the door over here. Yeah, but wait, before you guys take off, let me run something by it. Well, the big problem was the Congress, and what Sherman came up with at that point, and they couldn't even decide on how much should South Carolina have representation in Congress, and how much should New York have, and how much should Rhode Island have, and so so they got hung up on that. Sherman says, "Tell you what, let's have two chambers, and we're going to have one chamber based on the population, because you guys have all been talking about, Virginia is the biggest state. We got the most people. We don't want Delaware bossing us around. We got 15 times as many people living in Virginia as Delaware has. And so it's this one state, one vote thing's got to stop, and that's what they're at loggerheads on that." Sherman comes up with the idea of having a Senate. And basically, the Senate is going to be elected by the states, the state legislatures. The state legislatures will choose the two senators that serve from that state. And then the representatives will be elected by the people in districts of 30,000 people and at the time. And any legislation that gets proposed has to start in either house, although tax measures have to start in the House, not the Senate. And that's still true today. But they have to pass both. They got to go through both. So the states are represented as state government. And if state government doesn't like what we're doing, and the state governments are the ones that are creating this federation, if you guys don't like what we're doing, you can stop it in the Senate. And the people of the state, Virginia got a lot of people. And, if you want to outvote Delaware, outvote them in the House, but you still got to get it through the Senate. And everybody stopped when he said that. And they kind of went, wait, what? Two houses, it's got to go through both? That would work.
Yep.
So what Madison, 2.5 months later in September, he comes back and says, we got all this kind of, fleshed out. At this point, there's no Bill of Rights yet, and there's still an anti-federalist movement. George Mason's opposed, Patrick Henry's opposed. But they get to September, and Madison grabs 3 or 4 guys. They go in a smaller meeting room, and one morning, and they bang this thing out, and they come out and they said, okay, remember 2.5 months ago when Connecticut comes in and proposes this bicameral 2-house Senate and House for our legislation, and everybody had some issues with it, but everybody agreed to it. And we come up with this formula of how we're going to put them in there, and everybody agreed to that. And so everybody's happy with the representation South Carolina gets and what Massachusetts gets and what Virginia gets, et cetera. So what we're doing is we're going to have the states elect the president and the vice president, and the number of votes that each state gets is equal to that number. So it's whatever is in the House and whatever plus their 2 senators. So if you have 5 representatives in the House plus 2 senators, you get 7 votes to cast. And in our proposal here is the people who cast those votes will be electors, and they will be specially chosen in a manner in which the state legislature shall from time to time decide on how they're going to get chosen. So they put that out there. And Hamilton wrote in Federalist 68, Hamilton goes, this whole way of electing the chief magistrate was the only thing at the end of the convention, but it's the only thing that was basically nobody objected to and was unanimously agreed to. And he says the method of electing the chief magistrate, if it's not perfect, it's at least excellent. And so, because they had already agreed to the representation in Congress, so Madison just takes that same formula and said, that's how many votes you get. So they're going, well, who's going to cast the votes? He said, well, you'll get electors, and we'll let the state legislature, because they're state votes, and the states are electing the president. He's the CEO of the federation, and the federation is made up of the states.
Yep.
So the Federation of the United States is 50 states. So the CEO is elected by those 50 members. At that time it was, 13.
And that raises,
and so
that actually brings something up. The wording that you're using, something that I have always said. I'll say 2 things actually. And the person who interviewed you on the other podcast I listened to, he said one of these 2 things. A lot of people say the United States when it should be these United States. That's the first thing. And the second thing, a lot of people mix up is the terminology of what exactly this country is. And when you think about the terminology of these United States, it really puts it into perspective. Are we a nation of states or states of a nation? The answer is that we are a nation of states. If we were states of a nation, then we're no different than provinces of a nation. But we're using the terminology of states for the sole purpose of that these states are sovereign governmental entities, just like the state of France, the state of Italy, the state of Germany. The terminology of statehood in that time period was a sovereign governing body.
That's bullseye. That's exactly right. And that's something that I've learned here in the last 10 or 12 years. That's exactly right. The difference being is if you are how did you put it? A nation of states or
versus
a nation?
Yep.
States of a nation. Basically, I've just got a district office.
Yes.
I'm up here in Michigan. My district office here would be Lansing.
It's your county. That's your county within your state.
Yeah, my Lansing office for Michigan. Michigan would have the same power as a county, and I would just be carrying out the orders that came from D.C.
Yes.
And the United States is not put together that way. The states are the boss collectively. The states are the boss of the federal government. You can get into the separation of powers. I've actually got some other writings on that. You want to nerd out on something? That's super fast. But anyway, so just to finish up on what Madison came out with, is he's saying we're going to have the electors chosen in a manner that the legislatures will each decide. So they can come up with any way they want to. When we get into the national popular vote thing, that's the loophole that these guys on the left at national popular vote, they're using that loophole to try to change the way this is done.
Yeah.
But the electors now the comments there are two or three delegates are they're stand up making comments about this idea that they loved, and one of the delegates says, "Wait a minute. So if my state gets 9 votes and my legislature gets to decide who they are, and you got a provision in here, they can't have anything to do with the government. You know, there was actually one elector about 150 years ago from Oregon who also happened to be a postmaster at a local post office in Oregon, and his vote was thrown out because he had a job with the government, and you can't have any relationship with the government. That's part of the constitutional provision. That's the only elector that's ever been rejected by the Constitution. That was 1876 or something like that. But anyway, be that as it may, the so they're saying, well, this one delegate goes, so if the legislators are picking how these electors are chosen, I mean, the legislatures can pick them. They just can't be in the legislature. They can't be in government. So they're going to be the most informed, involved citizens of their state, right? And
that's the intent anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the theory. And the upshot of this, the byproduct of this, where these guys are going to have, they'll probably be the smartest people in the state. And another guy goes, they'll be so smart, these guys could probably be able to start their own college. And another guy said, yeah, you'd have a college of all of these electoral professors. And then another guy says they'd be an electoral college then, wouldn't it? That's where the term came from. That's the closest I could find to where that term came from. There is no college. As a matter of fact, the electors can't meet together. They all have to meet at the same time and the same day inside their respective states. So these are all happening in a state. They can't get together. They didn't want them colluding with each other. They had one proposal to bring them into Washington, D.C., and then one delegate stands up and says, are you kidding? You can put them into that cesspool? You got to be kidding. All that corruption and all that influence. You can put those in D.C., or back then it was New York, be the nation's capital. And they went, oh, yeah, that's bad. So how are you going to get around that? We'll have them all meet on the same day. And they will consider on behalf of their state how they want to vote, and they can vote any way they want to. And they'll cast 2 votes for president. We'll put 2 names in, 2 votes for president, and whoever comes in second place will be the vice president. And that worked fine for the Washington election, and they elected Washington and Adams, and they wound up. Turns out Adams and Thomas Jefferson. Adams was a big federal government guy, and Jefferson tended to be a big states guy, and so they're on the political opposite ends of the spectrum. And Jefferson was elected as Adams' vice president, and they were at loggerheads the whole time. And then I guess he was running against Aaron Burr in 1800, and turned into a real
a tie.
Went into a tie. I think they each got like 35 electoral votes or whatever. And so the thing goes to the House, and the House tied. And so they wound up coming up with the 12th Amendment, and the 12th Amendment got ratified in 1803 for the 1804 election. That's the system we've lived with ever since. And it basically just says the electors are going to still vote, still just the same way that Madison's got it set up and the convention agreed to and the states ratified, same way. But now, instead of casting 2 votes for president, where both of them had a majority, and but when they tied, it's like, which one's going to be president? So now they're saying You're going to cast one vote for president, and you'll cast a second vote and mark that ballot for vice president. That was the biggest change. And then the second biggest thing that the 12th Amendment does is it provides for a contingent election. If nobody gets a majority of the electoral college votes, of the electoral votes from the states, then those are all discarded and the election goes to the House, and the states elect the president using their House delegations to cast one vote. So there it's one state, one vote. California gets one vote, Missouri gets one vote, Michigan gets one vote, and Wyoming gets one vote if it ever got to the House. And so that's what's in the 12th Amendment. But anyway, and that's what they approved. And Alexander Hamilton, he's selling the Constitution now. He rates Federalist 68, and in
Yep.
68 he just praising the system up one side and down the other. So Federalist 51 and Federalist 68, especially on these topics, I think are two really good ones to see.
Yeah, so I think this is a good opportunity to actually read what the Constitution says about the Electoral College. So if you're looking for this part of the Constitution, is Article 2, Section 1, Clause 2 of the Constitution. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in Congress. That's exactly what you were talking about before. And if we really break this down at its core, each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct. The authority begins with the state, not a national electorate, and the power to determine the method belongs to the state legislature. A number of electors. The Constitution does not describe a direct vote for president. It describes electors who formally cast the constitutional vote for president, equal to the number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in Congress. The formula combines both the principles of federalism, population representation, and state representation with the Senate. The presidential selection reflects both people and states through the independent electors. So, John, I want to ask you one more historical question for the audience on this. How would you describe this formula becoming a part of the Great Compromise, which protects smaller states without stripping larger states of representation? And how does the Electoral College reflect that balance, especially considering that each state has different needs, interests, and priorities?
How would I describe the Electoral College in terms of that?
Yeah.
Well, nobody has ever really, since that convention, since the Great Compromise in July of 1787, in the middle of the convention, there were a few guys that had a couple issues with it, but the overwhelming majority of the convention voted in favor of that. Representatives over here and senators over there, and 2 senators from each state, and 1 per 30,000 population in the House. And even at that, the House is going to be elected by a district of people. Not everybody in the state votes for every congressman. It's just they're just a local district that elects them. And they all supported that. And because they all supported that, Madison winds up using that formula to say, because I don't want to have another month here in Philadelphia. I want to go home too. I'm going to use the same number we've already agreed to 2.5 months ago. So whatever you get in the legislature, which is 2 senators plus how many reps, we're going to give you that as the number of votes. And nobody could object to it. And ever since then, when they passed it, I've never read about or heard anybody talk about or suggest, nobody's ever had a problem with it. It's never been objected to this day.
Yeah.
Nobody objects to it. And so the Electoral College basically is it's like the best of both worlds. The people that are on the left who are pushing the national popular vote are trying to say that California is getting screwed because they only have 55 electoral votes, and Wyoming gets 3. But that's I don't know what the numbers break down to, but it's Wyoming gets more electoral votes per person that lives in the state than does California. But again, the population was never a basis. It's never been incorporated as a basis for the United States, other than the House of Representatives. So I guess my main thing is the Electoral College is a mirror of Congress. So however Congress changes, that automatically changes the Electoral College vote count, and nobody's ever objected to it.
Yeah, the only current problem that we actually do have with the Electoral College, in my opinion, is the Permanent Appropriations Act of 1929 that locked our representatives at 435. I spoke about that
Yep.
on one of my previous podcasts, and honestly, if we had repealed that, we wouldn't have that problem where California says, "Well, it's not fair that Wyoming gets one representative for every 300,000 people, but we get one representative for every 1 million people." And to an extent, they kind of have a fair point on that, but at the same time, it's caused by the Permanent Appropriations Act, not by the Electoral College itself.
Yeah.
And
I call it apportionment as opposed to appropriation, but
yeah,
they're apportioning how many. But you're making a good point there.
yeah.
Although the people on the left are still screaming because Wyoming they only got one member in the House. Why should they get? And they have 2 senators. Why should they get 3 electoral votes?
Right.
And so even if the apportionment had gone up, and you're so correct, that chat you and I had yesterday was pretty interesting on that. That if they stuck with the 30,000, we'd have what did we figure, 11,000 or 11,100 representatives in the House right now. So so they would have to do something different on that, I think. But the Electoral College came out of the Great Compromise on the legislative side, and they just use that as the numbers for each state. And again, it's the states that are making these decisions because they're putting together a federation of sovereign states. And the other big thing that they did, which has been very relevant with all this immigration stuff we're living with right now, is that they assigned the federal government some governing sovereignty. The states voluntarily, through the Constitution, which is a pact or a compact, when governments enter these agreements, they transferred, I don't know if it was 14, 15, or 16 different areas of governing to the federal government. And they said, okay, we're not sovereign in these 15 areas. Immigration, border control is one of these areas that's transferred over. Raising an army, coining the money, running a post office. These are things that the states, through the compact, assigned to the federal government. And in those 14, 15, or 16 areas of governing, the federal government is supreme. The president is tasked with the responsibility of enforcing all of the laws in all 15 of those areas. And the president does not need permission from anybody to enforce federal law. He can enforce federal law anywhere, and he can use any resource that the law allows him to use. And so he can, in the fight that's going on today, the president of the United States has a full authority to enforce immigration law, and he can do it anywhere in the United States that he needs to do that. But there's other areas where if it did not get transferred to the federal government can't govern.
Correct.
That governing authority stays with the states.
10th Amendment.
They were concerned about that in the anti-federalist papers, and so they made sure that the 9th and 10th Amendments both clarified that the states are supreme in every other area that wasn't given to the federal government. And so like Trump can't send in the Border Patrol and say, nope, the speed limit on the freeway through Chicago is now 95 miles an hour. or now it's 30 miles an hour. He can't go in there and start pulling people over and writing traffic tickets because that's a state function, and
Yeah.
the federal government has no power there. But I digress. I'm getting off the
Right.
topic a little bit, but anyway, so
So
yeah, so that's this. The Electoral College is a structure of federalism, and it is a huge structural component of the states keeping the federal government in check.
yep, and you keep quoting the Federalist Papers, and I love that. I direct people to the Federalist Papers all the time for the same reason you do. Um, I had some quotes prepared from the Federalist Papers for tonight, and from a lot of the same essays that you're quoting from. In Federalist 68, Hamilton argued that choosing a president should afford as little opportunity as possible to tumult and disorder. And in simple terms, he didn't want the presidential elections to turn into emotional, chaotic national popularity contests. He also warned,
Exactly.
yeah, and he also warned against the talents for low intrigue and the little arts of popularity. And in that, he's saying he's concerned about smooth talking demagogues. And he didn't want candidates to win by stirring up crowds rather than demonstrating real ability to character. And when you look at the last 4 to 6 elections we've had, that's all they've been doing. Each side's just been stirring up the other side as to why is this guy worse than me? Not why am I the best opportunity for this country? Why is this person worse than me? That's exactly what Hamilton did not want happening for presidential elections. And then
Yep.
in Federalist 10, Madison warned that pure democracies are vulnerable to factions, which again feeds right into that same thing.
Yep.
He says democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention. And what he means by that is his definition of a faction is a group of citizens, whether a majority or a minority, united by a passion of interest or to the adverse to the rights of others or to the long-term interests of the community. So a faction is someone who's interested only in their own priorities, no matter if it is against the rights of others or against the long-term interest of the community. In a pure democracy, he argued that there is nothing to prevent a passionate majority from imposing its will immediately and completely. When decisions are made by simple national headcount, temporary emotions can override justice, override stability, and minority rights. And it's also important to note that when he is speaking of minority rights, he's not speaking in the sense that we think of them today. He's speaking of any kind of minority of opinion, ethnicity, culture, religion, statehood, or otherwise. Any minority could be subject to the oppression of the majority under direct democracy. History, in Madison's view, showed that small democracies were often unstable, driven by impulse, swept up in popular waves, and prone to internal conflict. His solution was not to abandon popular government, but to refine it through a large republic, one that filters public opinion through structure, representation, and layered institutions. The Electoral College fit perfectly within that broader constitutional design. It does not ignore the people, but it prevents presidential power from resting solely on raw national majority. It channels national will through federal structure rather than direct aggression of national vote totals. And he even
That's hot.
Yep.
Yep.
And
Keep going. You're on a roll, man.
Yeah, and in Federalist 51, he again talks about the ambition. He's talking in this instance in Federalist 51. His primary topic is why the division of power in federal government, and he says ambition must be made to counteract ambition. And he's explaining in this that the Constitution divides power both vertically, so state versus federal, as well as horizontally with the various branches of government. You had the House and the Senate for the people and the states. You had the executive for the presidency, and you had the judiciary. All of them were done for division to prevent to prevent consolidation of power into a single national position.
I hope people, this whole segment that you just got through, getting through, that's something people should go back and replay, because that is just so important. That's part of the key to getting this whole thing. So
yeah, and you already brought up,
keeps the government in check, so.
Yep, and you already brought up the 12th Amendment. The only amendment that directly modified the presidential election process in our country is the 12th Amendment. And it happened, as you mentioned, because there was a tie. They realized, oh no, our system did not account for a tie. What do we do with a tie? And all the 12th Amendment did was it fixed it. Originally, electors, like you said, had 2 votes for president. The runner-up became vice president. In 1800, there was a tie between Jefferson and Burr. It threw the election into the House of Representatives, and created a constitutional crisis. They didn't know what to do. So that's when they came up with the 12th Amendment. It didn't abolish the Electoral College. It didn't create a national popular vote. It did not even centralize presidential elections. It just reinforced the Electoral College. They still met in the respective states, and the process remained federal but state-based and constitutionally structured. All it did was make it so the 2 votes that the electors had to be split between a president and a vice president. So
exactly. I also said that now if that's the amendment or but anyway, one of the votes had to be for somebody not from their own state.
Correct. So you couldn't have.
So that's why you got to split the president and vice president from being from different states. But yeah, bullseye. Exactly right.
There's actually one thing about what you just said, though, about it can't be from the same state. And I actually got corrected on this just last month. I was always saying the same thing as you, but it reads more specifically that, let's see if I have it. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for president and vice president, one of whom at least shall not be in an inhabitant of the same state with themselves, and they shall name in their ballots the person voted for president, and you get the rest. So
sure,
somebody,
so like for instance, if Marco Rubio had been Donald Trump's running mate, both of those guys were from Florida, so they would have just handcuffed Florida, and Florida's electors could have only voted for one of the 2.
Yep.
And
so
they couldn't have cast a vote for Marco Rubio, or
they couldn't cast a vote for both anyway. Yeah, they couldn't cast a vote for both anyway. So it's interesting because it doesn't exactly prohibit people from the same state running on the same ballot, but that state cannot vote. Yeah. So if Thomas Massey and Rand Paul,
right.
If Thomas Massey and Rand Paul, for example, teamed up for the 2028 election, they could only vote for one of them in Kentucky. Every other state would be free to vote for both. Yep.
Yeah, the Kentucky electors would have the problem.
Yep, but it does
pick one or the other.
But it does handcuff the states that they are from.
Correct. Yep. That's good correction. That's good.
Yeah, and somebody caught me on that not long ago. I was always saying the same thing as you without thinking about, oh, hey, it's only for that state. Because I kept saying, oh, it's not possible. It's not well, it is, but it's just not likely.
And I'd say probably 2/3 of what I've learned has been me getting caught by somebody. So I can stop and go nerd it out and look it up, and son of a gun, it is that way. Yeah.
Right.
Good.
So with all of that being said, now that we've grounded ourselves in what the Electoral College is, why it exists, how the Constitution deliberately structured it, I think we can finally turn to the central issue here. Uh, this issue typically tends to resurface after each presidential election. This is the only time it really makes headlines. And it's especially when the Electoral College winner does not match the popular vote. And I have seen people from both sides argue against the Electoral College when that happens against their favor. So, John, you've been fighting this battle state by state for years. Let's start at the foundation. For the viewers who may be hearing about the National Popular Vote Compact for the first time, what exactly is the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact? And help us understand what it does and what it is designed to accomplish.
The National Popular Vote Interstate Compact is a compact. In other words, it's a contract that's going to be agreed to by governments, in this case, the state governments, and not all of the state governments. They don't need all of the state governments. They just need some of the state governments. So it's I call it a collusion agreement because a few states are getting together to collude to change the manner in which the president of the United States, the CEO of the Federation, is elected. It is a usurpation of the state's ability to cast votes and choose electors in the manner in which a legislature chooses to choose electors. Any state, Missouri could turn around this year and say, you know what? We've had so many problems with popular voting. We're not going to do popular voting anymore. And for the next two elections, this statute says that we're going to have the legislature name the electors. And then after that, we can do whatever. The legislature can choose any manner that they want. So that's what there's a guy by the name of John Koza. He graduated from University of Michigan. He's the guy that invented the scratch-off lottery ticket, and he's made billions of dollars off of that lottery ticket technology. And he lives out in the north end of San Francisco. He's about 83 years old today, and he's been the main financing money behind National Popular Vote Inc. They hire numerous former state lawmakers. They probably have 6 or 8 on the payroll or under retainer at any point in time, and they will flood the zone in each of these state capitals and pitch the bill. And what the bill does is it literally usurps the state's ability to choose the CEO of the Federation. It converts the United States from a federation of sovereign states into a national democracy.
So,
And that's what, go ahead.
so that leads to a question for the viewers. I know the answer to this, but I want to hear you explain this. Why is this being pursued through state legislatures instead of through an Article 5 amendment process?
It should, if somebody wanted to make the change, it should go through the Article 5 amendment process. However, the left knows beyond all doubt, reasonable and otherwise, that it would never get through an Article 5 amendment process. The Article 5 amendment process, you'd have to have 2/3 of the House. There's two paths. Path number one, which is the only way we've had amendments so far. Path number one, 2/3 of the Congress House plus 2/3 of the Congress Senate agree to a proposed amendment to the Constitution that gets sent out to all 50 of the state legislatures, and 3/4 of the state legislatures must agree to it to ratify it. So that takes 38 states. They just have known since day one when they cooked this thing up in 2004. They have known there's no chance whatsoever that 38 states are going to approve this.
Yeah.
And so they aren't even trying. So they came up with, as a matter of fact, on my website, keepour50states.org, on our resources page, I have an article that was published. There were by oh gosh, now I'm having a brain freeze. What his name is? Vikram Amar, I think his name is. Anyway, he's a law school professor. His brother was the dean of the law school at Yale. The other one's a law school professor at University of Chicago, and there's a third one. But they were sitting around in a coffee shop after the Al Gore George Bush election, and they're still mad about that election, and they believe the Supreme Court selected George Bush to be president of the United States. And so they said, this is just a travesty, and we got to finally get rid of this Electoral College nonsense because Al Gore had, I forgot what it was, 85,000 more popular votes across the country than George Bush did. But anyway, so so these law school professors cooked up this idea and said, you know what? Matter of fact, Jesse, you read it at the start of the show. Article 2 says that the electors shall be chosen in a manner in which the legislature shall direct. The legislature gets to choose. And so these law school professors say, man, that's crystal clear. So if the legislature chooses to elect their electors based on what a national popular vote total is, that's allowed by the Constitution. That's how we do it. That's how we skin this cat. Whoa. Well, it winds up, the idea gets bubbled up to John Koza, he's funded Democrat candidates and Democrat causes for tens of millions of dollars back since 1992 that I could find. And they wind up taking this idea. They probably took it to a bunch of different people. They take it to John Koza in San Francisco, and he lit up like a Christmas tree on it. And he just glommed onto it, and he adopted it, and he created the National Popular Vote Inc. Organization, and he's got a National Popular Vote Foundation, and he's raising money for it. But most of the money comes from his own personal bank account. And so what he's doing is they cobbled together this compact, and it really is a horrible contract. It's a horrible document. It's sloppily written. It's got omissions in it. There's contradictions in it.
I didn't know about the omissions.
Yeah, it's just got and to the point where, hang on just a second. I'm going to see if I can find this on my site because I've got it here. I'm on my resources page. Handouts, and I'm just scrolling down to see if I can find it real quick because it's hyper interesting that the law school professor who cooked this idea up, stand by just a minute. I will find it because I got it right here. Boom. Vikram Amar, Dean and Professor, University of Illinois Law School, was the original designer of the National Popular Vote Scheme along with his brother. And on April the 18th of 2019, Vikram posted in a trade publication called Verdict Justia. It's on verdict.justia.com, which is a law school professor and law website and newsletter or whatever. He posted his own article saying that he's opposed to the National Popular Vote. And he's the guy that invented it. And he's saying the drafters of the National Popular Vote plan in play today did not take our advice in this respect. They did not build into the plan uniform rules of voting eligibility, uniform presidential ballots, and an election dispute procedure. They did not delegate authority to do so to a non-governmental commission, nor did they affirmatively invite Congress to step in. To my mind, the most important issue surrounding the entire national popular vote movement as it approaches critical mass in the states and builds some support on Capitol Hill, and the issue on which thoughtful analysts ought to be focused, is how Congress, in the course of approving the compact or in adopting a freestanding statute, might fill in the dangerous gaps in the national popular vote design. He's got two other short paragraphs on it, but my point being is that this is the let me find you again here. Anyway, there we go. All right. So the two guys that dreamed this idea up and John Kozel glommed onto and started running with are now opposed to it because it's just fraught with problems. It's going to invite litigation. It's going to cause confusion and so on and so forth. But basically, what it does is it doesn't direct who the votes are cast for. So like Virginia, it just passed the House and it just passed the Senate. Our people on the ground in Virginia just sent me a note today that is going through it. Virginia Assembly has a thing to do a crossover. So no new bills can be brought up this year. Any bill that passed one house is now in the other house. And there's just a little procedural thing that they got to do, which they'll probably do this week. And so next week, that national popular vote, which is passed both chambers in Virginia, national popular vote will probably go to the new governor's desk next week or the week after, and she'll sign it. And so Virginia will be, they're literally transferring the control of who names their electors. And so that's what national popular vote does. National popular vote changes who decides who the presidential electors are in a state. And the only states that it affects are the states that join the compact. Right now there's 18. They're probably going to have, to make this effective, they need a total of 270 electoral votes signed on. So they'll need probably 21, maybe 22 states. So 28 or 29 states. All 50 states have considered it at least once. Most states have considered it 6 or 7 times already and have rejected it already. But those 28 or 29 other states that have rejected it multiple times, it won't make any difference anymore because the 21 or 22 states that do join it, they're the ones that are colluding together and they're changing in just those states who chooses the presidential electors. And so they're hanging their hat on Article 2, the one that you just read, that just says that the legislature gets to choose the manner in which they're chosen. But there's other big issues that are going to stop that. But once that thing is activated, the courts can't get involved until it's activated. They can't render they can't have any hearings. They can't render any opinions or anything. So this thing has to go into effect, and then a non-national popular vote state is going to have to file a lawsuit against the other states that are in the compact, and then that goes straight to the Supreme Court, and then that's when the Supreme Court could hear the argument. And but by
if
then,
they even choose to,
will be a mess. But that's what it's doing. And so it's what it's saying is, in Virginia, they had I think it was, I just looked this up, 4.5 million people in Virginia voted. So in Virginia, 4.5 million people make up 2.7% of all the people that did vote in the election. But they make up 100% of the decision of who Virginia's 13 electors are going to be. And so Virginia last election voted for Kamala Harris by popular vote. She beat Trump by 3.5 percentage points by popular vote in Virginia. So Kamala Harris got 13 votes. Had Virginia joined this compact, Trump wound up tallying more popular votes across the country that Harris did, Virginia would have had to change that, and the Trump electors would have been put in place. So Virginia, even though Virginia voters voted for Kamala Harris, all of the 13 of Virginia's votes would have gone to Donald Trump instead.
It would be kind of funny when you really think about it, because the majority of the states that are signing on this are either blue or purple states, and
they're all blue.
And it would be funny though if like they signed on to it, they got 270, and then all of them vote for the Democrat president, but the Republican wins the national popular vote. He sweeps the country. He'd be the first president to win all 50 states because they signed on to that stupid compact. Do you think they would hold on to that compact after that?
I'm really surprised that Virginia is moving this one forward, because that election, November 2024, had the National Popular Vote Compact been enforced, Donald Trump would have gotten 518 electoral votes, and Kamala Harris would have gotten 17. So it would have been 518 to 17 in the Electoral College, and that would have been a landslide. I mean, and they're saying Trump did govern with a 518 to 17 landslide on that, but that's basically what it does, and it's very, very much unconstitutional. It's just that because a court can't step in until it goes into effect, it going into effect causes chaos, confusion. It changes the way elections are handled. There's a bunch of the mechanics on it. One of the arguments that they say is that the Electoral College is obsolete. There's been all different kinds of arguments. They used to say every day that the Electoral College protected slavery, and it did exactly the opposite. It helped to end slavery because the Electoral College is what elected Abraham Lincoln. He didn't have a majority of the popular vote, but he got a majority of the electoral vote. But the Electoral College, helped end slavery. And this is the thing, I have a slide over here, but the only time the Electoral College could ever be obsolete is if the United States ceases to be a federation.
Yeah, and
that's the objective of the left. They don't like the federation. They don't want the United States to be a federation.
And
they want the United States to be a monolithic nation. So,
with the argument of it being obsolete, it goes back to again like what the founding fathers said. James Madison, with how direct democracies end up basically eating themselves alive. Who was it that said that a democracy is like two wolves and a sheep voting on what to have for lunch? Then you had John Adams with the quote that his greatest fear of our republic is it being divided into two great parties, each pitted against one another with concerted measures to undermine the other. And then you have the Electoral College put in as this safeguard against those factions, those infighting and everything. With how much infighting there is in our country right now, left versus right, Democrat versus Republican, conservative versus liberal, all of them just butting heads every single election, I would say that the Electoral College is more necessary now than it's ever been as a safeguard to prevent the rapid national interest and popularity to determine the course of the nation.
Absolutely. No question. The Electoral College ends regionalism. The way National Popular Vote is set up right now, you got the East Coast and New England. Let's say the East Coast, you got the West Coast and New England basically are the ones running the National Popular Vote, and they really don't need a heck of a lot more than that, one or two other states. And so what you have is you have these coastal regions are actually going to be choosing the president year after year. And what the Electoral College does is it forces a candidate to sew together regional alliances. The corn farmers in Nebraska and Iowa and Kansas have to find something in common with a candidate who's appealing to, the South and to the, uh,
The Midwest.
Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana. And so, in order to get a majority, and so that's one of the big beauties of the Electoral College. It's really an ingenious system, and so it'll never be obsolete. So
Yep. Yep.
it's yeah, it's pretty crazy stuff. But I'm trying to think what else.
So
Do you have any other questions on your end or whatever? But
yeah. So one of the things we've kind of touched on this already, but why has the national popular vote movement gained so much momentum over the years? I know, like I mentioned, every time we see a split in the national popular vote versus the Electoral College, the legitimacy debate erupts. But why does this issue flare up so intensely in those moments? And is this controversy new in American history, or has it existed in basically all cycles?
it actually has existed for. Uh, I'm not exactly sure when the first one erupted, but probably right around the time of Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr. And there've been debates about it ever since. And so it's like, well, if you don't like it, change it. That's what Article 5 is there for. Change it. And nobody's ever been able to change it. And so the Constitution, you either follow it or you change it, but you just don't disregard it. And so there have been, I forgot the numbers, it's in the hundreds. There have been 300 or 400 or 500 efforts, bills introduced in Congress and proposed amendments to the Constitution to do away with the Electoral College, but they've all died. None of them have gotten out of Congress, and so it comes up a lot. There's a vocal minority. What the national popular vote does, it changes the country from being a federation of states choosing its CEO for the federation to a national popular democracy, and the and I forgot where I was going with that, but and they're doing it without going through the constitutional process. The Article 4, matter of fact, I've written an essay and I've got that up on my blog, which is also at keepour50states.org. You can look up Opinion by John, but I just posted another essay that explains why Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution guarantees to every state a Republican form of government. Almost everybody I've talked to over the last 15 years has said that that's a requirement by the Constitution that all of the states must operate and provide a Republican form of government for all the people that live in their states. It says no such thing. It is not, that would be called the requirement clause, as I point out in my essay.
It's
and
a
it's not called the
guarantee.
requirement clause.
Yeah, it's a guarantee,
It's a
not a
guarantee clause.
requirement.
Right. It's a guarantee to the states that what's a republic? A republic, as opposed to a monarchy. A monarchy is where, like Great Britain, King Charles is now the King of England and the United Kingdom. Nobody who lives there had one thing to say, pro or con, about him being king. He's actually a direct descendant of the King George that we declared independence from in 1776. It's the same family.
Yep.
And that whole family has been the monarchy in the United Kingdom for 400 or 500 years now. And what a republic is, it says that's not how we get our rulers. Those who govern us are not handed to us by a family coat of arms. A republic simply means those who are governed choose those who govern. And in the republic, we have a federal republic, a federation, which is a republic. The federal government itself governs the states. They're suing each other all the time and enforcing laws. Look at, ICE has had an experience in Minneapolis, St. Paul right now, enforcing federal law. And there's been a big fight over it. But the uh, the the governments uh, of the states are entitled to choose those who would rule over them or govern them from the federation. In other words, the states get and are guaranteed to choose the president of the United States. They were also guaranteed to choose all their senators as well. And the 17th Amendment was ratified by the states, and the states surrendered that and gave that up. And that was a huge mistake. The
Yep.
17th Amendment, another podcast, but that needs to be
Yep.
repealed.
Yep. I agree.
That was how the states, as states, had their seat in the legislative branch of the federal government. That's how they kept them in check. And when they did that, the political parties took, they took control of the entire Congress.
Yep.
Political parties now control the House and the Senate. There never was a Senate majority leader before 1915. There's not a Senate minority leader either. And they had there was no necessary use for them, but now there are, because of the 17th Amendment, and the people are, elected popularly. And so this Electoral College is really the last big federal element for the states, but the states are guaranteed. And so, the state of Missouri, which is going to stay solid, red on this issue, Iowa, well, Florida, well, those are the states, Texas, well, those are the states that will bring litigation. And I'm quite convinced that they'll use Article 4, Section 4, saying, you know what, the Constitution guarantees us as Florida and us as Missouri that this federal government will always be a republic, the federal government. And that means we as the state get to choose, how we get to vote, for president. You can't turn around and negate the manner in which we choose. It doesn't make any difference. Once this thing goes through, now it doesn't make any difference. I got another one. Let's see if I can pull this up.
Well, while you pull that up, I cannot believe I forgot to put the fourth Article 4 in my notes, because I spoke to you about Article 4. I spoke to you about that before I even invited you on the podcast. But
sure.
Yeah, but Article 4, like the guarantee of a Republican form of government, and you had mentioned, like, what is a Republican form of government? Well, a Republican form of government is where the power comes from. Like the monarchy, the power comes from the king. A Republican form of government, the power comes from the people. And in this instance, what's the first three words of the Constitution? We the people. We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. And that's where the core of the republic comes from, is we the people, and we are guaranteed a government for the people.
Yep, that's very, very true. Although it was the state legislatures that called for the Constitutional Convention, the state legislatures set the rules as what they could consider at the convention, and in order to have the Constitution, it was the state legislatures that were required to ratify.
Yep.
And to get around Rhode Island not being there, Rhode Island sit there and say, "Hey, it's unanimous. We're not there. They can't do anything without us." They wrote into the Constitution 3/4 of the states, which is 9 out of the 12. So as soon as the 9th state signs on, we got a new government. And now the question remains for the other 4: do you guys want to join it or not? And that's what they did.
Right.
And but yeah, so the states are entities, and yes, it does say we the people, but that does not necessarily establish that it's a national democracy that they created.
Correct. It's just saying that the just power of government comes from we the people, but it's not saying that we are a direct democracy. Yeah.
Yep. Correct. Yep. Yeah. The governed get their authority from the consent of the governed.
Yep.
Which includes the states and the people. Like in the 9th and 10th Amendments, it says
that
these rights remain with the states and with the people.
Yep.
So the states are entities too, so they can sue and be sued and have standing in court and so on and so forth. But
Yep.
yeah, no, it's very, very interesting stuff. But yeah, national popular vote, they've signed up blue states. They've only been able to sign up blue states, and that's where there's California. Arnold Schwarzenegger was governor when California joined. Overwhelming Democrat, overwhelming House out there. He vetoed it in 2007 or 2008, and they came just a few votes shy of overriding his veto. And in the next session, they did it again. He vetoed it a second time, and I think that was 2010. But in 2010, California had the votes to override the veto, and that's what happened in Hawaii. In Hawaii, the governor vetoed it. Governor Lingle, I think his name was, but they.
I'm actually very surprised.
Hawaii overrode the governor's veto there. Nevada, Governor Sisolak was governor in 2017 or 18, and the Nevada legislature passed national popular vote, and he vetoed it, and they had very little opposition to it, so they couldn't override his veto. But Nevada stayed out of it. But yeah, they've been in 185 legislative sessions now, and they've won 18 states now with Virginia, and but they've all been Democrat House, Democrat Senate. The last Republicans really to vote for it were in New York. They got about 56 Republicans in 2013.
Talk about shooting yourself in the foot. Wow.
Say again.
I said, talk about shooting yourself in the foot.
Oh yeah, I just don't get it. Why would you say, we're in Michigan. We have 10 million people that live in Michigan. We get consistently 5.5 million people that turn out and vote, and we get 15 electoral votes. Why would we want to give the control of who those electors are to people who aren't from Michigan?
Yeah.
But there's one other thing. Let me see if I can toss this up for you. And
all right,
this was a document that our group found, and this was on a National Popular Vote Interstate Compact social media page. I think it was Facebook, but I'm not 100% positive.
Are you able to zoom in on it a little bit? The text is a little small. Are you able to zoom in?
Is this zooming in for you at all?
Yes, it is.
Yep, I've got this. This blue highlighted piece is what they posted, and then I just put it on a handout flyer. It's available for free download on keepour50states.org on my resources handouts page. But this was March the 28th of 2019, and what National Popular Vote is coming out. They're coming right out and say it in their own stuff. In March of 2019, electoral votes are not needed to motivate their own people and some gullible state lawmakers about how close they actually are to pulling off this contract of collusion. The NPV lobbyists point out that their scheme does not need 268 electoral votes worth of states or the Americans that they represent, because once they get their 270 colluding votes signed on, the left side of our chart here is the 268 votes that the compact doesn't need, since they won't matter. So this is them saying that Colorado and Delaware had just joined. They had 184 signed on at that point. Today we're sitting at 209. Virginia's going to make it 222 votes. They need 270 altogether. And in this chart here, this pie chart, they're saying that they needed 86 more votes, They've now picked up 38 more votes. And there's 268. They come down here and it says the right half is the 270 votes that the compact needs signed on in order to go into force. That's not in the Constitution. That's in the compact. That's a compact requirement. They're turning this on. There's no law that says this is active or inactive at any point in time. This is just them agreeing to collude that when we get 270 votes, we're turning this sucker on and nobody can stop us. The left side is the 268 votes that the compact doesn't even need, since they won't matter once the 270 votes on the right are secured. That means there's 28 or 29 states out there that won't even matter once this compact goes into force. That's a true statement. And so basically, we're pointing out down here that that the graphic is correct. We brought this up in Virginia in 2019? It may have been 2019 or 2021. Can't remember. But our people were there in Virginia. They brought this in, and one of them jumped up and screamed that, "Hey, wait a minute, that's not even ours. This isn't correct. We don't know anything about this." Turns out it was their own document. So I added this block on this handout. It just says the graphic is correct. Whether they had admitted to it or not, the National Popular Vote Compact scheme renders as completely inoperative the Article 4 guarantee of a Republican form of government to every state, which includes the individual state actions that they take under Article 2 to decide the best manner for their state in which to choose the state's electors. They will actually mean nothing to the majority of states that do not join the NPV scheme. So that sums up what they're trying to do. And their party represents a large minority in the United States. The Democrat Party has never really reflected, I don't think, a majority position, but they'll get 38%, 40%, 45%, something like that. And what they want to do, they can't win enough elections with their ideas and their policies, et cetera, at that. They can't win the presidential because it takes a majority of the Electoral College. So by going to national popular vote, all they need is a large plurality. And it's the one with the most votes, popular votes, wins. The ones with not the ones with the majority of votes. The one with the most votes, that's the definition of plurality. So if you put 5 or 6 candidates running for president, and we've had a number of candidates before running for president. If you had 5 candidates running, piece of cake that the largest, most votes vote getter could pull in 27% of the popular vote, 28% of the popular vote, and win the election under national popular vote. You could have 72% of the population voting against the candidate, but the other 4 votes just pulled in less than 28%.
Yeah.
Candidate 2 got 25, candidate 3 got 22, candidate 4 got 15, and however they break that out. So who's the leader of the pack? The guy's sitting at 27 or 28%.
Yep.
So what you do is you flood the zone with a whole bunch of anti-constitutionalists. Doesn't matter as long as they don't like the Constitution, and the party that does like the Constitution, they're trying to get the majority or whatever. I think the political flaw in it is that they're going to flood the zone. They don't care which of the 4 candidates they put out of 5. They don't really care which one wins, but they they can win the election with 28% of the vote. And
yeah.
And another big flaw with national popular vote is that we don't have a national election. We have 50 plus 1, which is DC. We have 51 state elections that operate in a federal election. So the president's elected by the federation, not by a national popular vote. There's never been such a thing as a national popular vote.
So
California, there's a bill pending right now in California. They want to lower their voting age to 16. They can do that with national popular vote. So what's that do to all the 16-year-olds in Missouri
they,
and here in
they
Michigan?
they don't get the same representation that California gets.
They can't vote, but California could do that. They can just pass it. They can pass it a week before the election in November. They can pass it in October, and I think they pick up out there. They pick up like 1.1 million more votes.
So
And just count them, and then the senior election officer, just tells the rest of the 22 states, yeah, we had 11 million votes. No, make that 12.1 million votes. Oh,
right.
and the other states, count them. But
So
anyway, that's.
So I have kind of one more topic I want to get at on this discussion, and it comes down to now that we understand what the Electoral College is, what the national popular vote is, what are some of their strongest and most common arguments, and why does that resonate so powerfully with so many voters across that spectrum?
I might have been in this, for too long. I don't think there are any strong arguments that they have. The argument I think that resonates, I think it's the only argument that resonates, is we elect our PTA president with the most votes. We elect our mayor with the most votes. We elect our state senator with the most votes. We elect our governor with the most votes.
The misconception, yeah, the misconception that we are a democracy instead of a republic.
Yeah, correct. And a federation. Yeah.
Yeah.
If we ignore that we're a federation, well, that makes sense. But what is a federation? It's a federation of states. It's the United States of America. We're not the United Population of America. We're the United States of America.
Yep.
So the federation is 50 states.
So that may be the most resonating argument of theirs, but what's the most common argument to try and push it? And I ask this because I don't want like a misrepresentation of their argument, because we need to know and understand their argument in order to respond to it. So what's their most common argument, and how can we argue against it effectively to prevent that from ever coming into our states, or even potentially getting our states to revoke the compact?
And as a matter of fact, in the last 3 or 4 years, our side is we've had about 6 or 7 of these NPV states have legislation introduced to repeal their participation in national popular vote. And so we're trying to get that to gain some traction, but we haven't gotten any of those across the finish line yet. So we're kind of setting dumpster fires in their backyard on some of these, and they got to divert money and resources to go shore it up in New Jersey and Connecticut, and
make them play some defense.
Make them play some defense. Yep. But we don't. Our side doesn't have really any funding. We don't have any money. We don't.
Yeah.
But England and his guys, they just do a phenomenal job. SaveOurStates.com is a great resource too. But seriously, I think the most common argument that they make is we elect. This is the only office in America that we don't elect with the people. We don't elect with a popular vote. This is the only office and why is that? Because the president represents all the people. And in reality, the president represents the states. He represents the states to all the other nations out there. He's got foreign policy initiatives, Army, Navy, trade deals, that kind of stuff. The domestic governing is supposed to happen at the governor's level. That's where, we're supposed to be governed the most with the government closest to us. We don't want the president being our school superintendent. And the blue party does. They do want the president to call all those shots.
And
so that's really the most common argument, is that the president is the only office that we have that is not elected by a popular vote.
You make a good point, by
And
the way. You make a good point, by the way, with regards to the governors, the states who are supposed to handle the domestic issues. And I will bring this up all the time in political discussion. And when you look at the Constitution and the federal laws and state laws and the 10th Amendment, all powers not delegated to the federal government belong to the states and the people thereof. And let's look at the prohibition of alcohol. It took an amendment to the Constitution for them to pass a law against alcohol consumption. So why then can the federal government have class A, class B, class C, class whatever for drug classes and all of these different classifications for all these different laws, and it's not just isolated to marijuana or crack cocaine or whatever drug. It's all of these federal regulations and laws that they're pushing down our throats. The Constitution pretty much says straight up they don't have that power. That power is the state. The state is who is supposed to regulate all of these things. And if we had to pass an amendment to the Constitution to prohibit alcohol and an amendment to allow it again, why can we pass all of these blanket laws on all of these different domestic issues now without a constitutional amendment?
that's $1 million question right there. You're making a great point, and there are many laws that shouldn't be. The Supreme Court very frequently is way, and before Roe v. Wade in 1972, many cases would get to the Supreme Court of the United States, and the Supreme Court would not hear the case with one sentence. The court declines to review the case for want of a federal question. In other words, it's none of our business. They should have done that with Roe v. Wade. In other words, at that point, there were 32 states that banned abortions by 1971, 72 when it came up. They got Texas had an abortion ban. And so somebody in Texas was a Jane Roe. She went nameless for her own protection or whatever. And so bubbles up to the Supreme Court, and the court, was it Earl Warren was the head of that court? I don't know. But anyway, that court in 1972 made a huge error by saying, yeah, we'll hear that case. We'll listen to that case. They didn't have the authority to, because, and I got this from Antonin Scalia, who was on the court, who passed away about 10 years ago. But he said that, and he's very, very strong pro-life. I'm strong pro-life. But he said abortion just is not a thing that was transferred over to the federal government. And we haven't adjudicated nor legislated the definition of when life begins. So the question is open. Therefore, the federal government has no business being in that topic. So the correct thing is that Roe v. Wade should not have been heard. They made the bigger mistake when the federal government said, yep, your state laws may not be enforced. Those are all unconstitutional. So like here in Michigan also had banned abortions. And so they didn't overturn any of the state laws. The ruling was you can't enforce the state laws. So 3 years ago, the Supreme Court corrects that and says, you know what? There's lack of a federal question. It's not the states never gave us this governing authority. This court should not have taken that issue up. This belongs to the states. So whatever the states want to do. So they overturned Roe versus Wade. And as soon as they did, all of the other states, including mine here in Michigan, had an abortion law that abortions are banned. And that'd been on the books since 1930. And so all of a sudden, Michigan bans abortions. Well, Governor Whitmer here, she comes right out and she goes, I refuse to enforce that law. And instead, she backs a petition deal they got through Detroit. They got, I don't know how many, 700,000 signatures to put it on the ballot. And they now put it in the Constitution. Michigan has now, because of her efforts, Michigan now has the most liberal pro-abortion. Matter of fact, Michigan has banned abortion malpractice even. And I defend the state's right to do that. I'm here in Michigan fighting against it. I have a chance of overturning it here in Michigan. But if that was federal, I wouldn't have a chance of doing that federal. And that's the whole point of domestic governing. And so that abortion fight is a good example of what you're talking about there, Jesse. It's
and
alcohol. That's another one. That's a beautiful example.
And not to go down this rabbit hole too much longer, but to raise the point to what you said, as there being no federal question to the Supreme Court, that derives from Article 3, Section 2. For anyone who is not entirely familiar. So Article 3, Section 2 says the judicial branch shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution the laws of the United States and the treaties made or which shall be made under their authority, to all cases affecting ambassadors or public ministers and consuls, to all cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction, to all controversies to which the United States shall be a party, to controversies between two or more states, between a state and citizen of another state, between citizens of different states, and between citizens of the same state claiming lands under grants of different states, and between a state or the citizen thereof and a foreign state or citizen or subject. Those are the guidelines. There's nothing that's talking about domestic law enforcement. There's nothing that's talking about whether or not a state can set up its own judicial system. There's nothing about whether or not, I burned my hand on a hot coffee from McDonald's, so I'm going to sue all the way up to the Supreme Court. None of that. None of that. It is all written right there. Those guidelines are all that the Supreme Court has jurisdiction over.
Yep. That's very correct. In other words, it's laws of the United States.
Yeah.
And Congress can't pass a law. They're not supposed to pass a law regulating, Department of Natural Resources fishing license regulations in our state.
Correct.
So if they did, the Supreme Court come back and say, no, you guys, you stepped into the state's area and that's domestic governing.
Yes.
But if Congress can point to a constitutional authority, there's one last point you talked about. What are good common arguments? The common arguments that I hear a lot from NPV is it's not fair. It's not fair. I mean, it's not fair. And they always point out to Wyoming. It's not fair. They get so many votes. And so we're getting screwed. Somebody's getting screwed. And so what I do is I just point out that the Electoral College is eminently fair. Since 1904, the Electoral College has elected a Democrat 15 times. And now since Trump got elected, they've elected a Republican 16 times. It doesn't get more fair than that. That's as fair as it is. And this is proof positive. And so each time I bring this up and show this graph, this chart, well, you're a poo-poo head then. They drop the argument. You can't argue that the Electoral College is somehow unfair. Is this, because it's just been evenly split. And it kind of goes back like this. We had a bunch of Republicans get elected, I think in the 17 or 1890s or something like that. The Republican Party didn't exist until Abe Lincoln gets elected in 1860, but Democrats were elected. Jefferson Davis. No, he was the Confederate States anyway, but it gets blurred. And also the other thing is one other point that I like to make. Not only is it fair, you can look at this and go, it doesn't get more fair than that. So you can't say we're getting rid of the Electoral College because it's biased. It's just flat out not biased.
And you know, when I was looking at that screen, there was something else I had noticed with that, and that was that the not only is it like 15 and 15, like it's literally 50-50. It's not like you have 6-7 times in a row the Republicans win, and then the popularity shifts, and 6-7 times the Democrats win. It's Republicans win here and there, then the Democrats win here and there, then it's Republicans win here and there, then it's the Democrats win here and there again. There's no one side dominating in any period. It's the only time there is quote unquote a domination was when FDR was president 4 straight times or 3 straight times, whatever it was.
Yeah. And he was followed by Truman. Yep. Yeah. So you had whatever that is, 20 years, five terms of a Democrat. That's the longest run. But yeah, so you can see a pendulum here swinging back and forth.
Yeah.
The other thing is they're always talking about how fair, if they aren't elected by popular vote, then he's not a legitimate president. I mean, look at George Bush, look at Donald Trump. He's just not legitimate because he didn't win the popular vote. Well, popular voting didn't happen in all of the states until the election of 1880.
Good point.
So
that's something a lot of people don't know too. That's a very good point.
Yeah. James Monroe got reelected in 1820, and in 1820 we had 24 states, and out of the 24 states, 9 did not have a popular vote. So when Abraham Lincoln got elected, not all the states had a popular vote. It wasn't until the election of 1880 when all of the state legislatures had independently said, yeah, let's have our state population choose our electors. Well, they're allowed to do that. And so the citizens of the state of Wyoming got to choose the state of Wyoming's 3 electors. So I come back when I hear that and I say, okay, so what you're telling me is the presidents elected prior to 1880 are not legitimate presidents.
Right.
Because not all the states even conducted a popular vote, right? Well, no. So you're saying Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, all the guys that John Quincy Adams, all of those guys, Abraham Lincoln, Ulysses Grant, you're telling me that those guys are illegitimate because not all of the people of the United States were allowed to vote, because not all of the states conducted a popular election to elect the president. Well, no, of course they're legitimate. Well, so then they're legitimate today. All the presidents have been legitimately elected. Why is that? Because there's no such thing as a national popular vote. The states elect the president of the United States. So that's
all right. So we know their common. So we know their common arguments now. So I got basically one last thing before we start closing up. What has proven effective in fighting back against the national popular vote, and how can others get involved in pushing back against
it? Information, and that's what we've been trying to do. We try to be a clearinghouse. What I think is honestly is an excellent and probably even better clearinghouse than Keep Our 50 States is Save Our States. That's Trent England's group. They've got some paid staff, and Trent's got a budget, and he's been in probably 35 legislatures in person. And I look up to Trent as the national leader on this. But SaveOurStates.com has phenomenal information. KeepOur50States.org, I would say, are the 2 leading websites that have information. And getting this information, like the chart of showing that the Electoral College is not biased and it's fair, sending that to lawmakers has been effective. we have found in many states where Democrat lawmakers, when we ask them about, when I talk to them about Bush versus Gore and what did they think of that, they get more animated about it than the Republicans do. And they just say, we just simply can't allow that to happen again. I said, what is that you don't want to happen again? The courts cannot possibly pick. That just can't happen. We can't allow that. Well, then I go, guess what? This thing that you're supporting is so flipping flawed that once this goes into effect, only the courts are going to be picking the president. You're going to be lawsuits are going to be everywhere. You know, you have a situation. They're supposed to, according to the compact says if you join this compact, by July 20th of the election year, you have to notify all of the other states that you're in the compact. Okay. And you can't quit the compact after July 20th. This is what you're agreeing to. Okay. Now it's a compact. It's not a law. It's not in the Constitution. It's just an agreement. Okay. So, and this is how I talk to these Democrat lawmakers. And they say, okay, so let's say you put Michigan in this thing. All right. And so next year's presidential election, and we go through this whole thing, and Michigan votes for the Democrat, except that the national population goes to the Republican. And now we got to take Michigan's 15 votes. And instead of, the 54% of the people that wanted the Democrat in, they're going to vote. All of our 15 votes now are going to the Republican. And now you guys, you're in the November the 5th, let's say, the election results get turned in, and Michigan's going for the Republican, even though the population of Michigan voted for the Democrat. Who's going to get the phone calls? Not me. It's you. Right. You're the lawmaker. They're going to, and I'm going to be out there saying, call the lawmaker, complain to them. They're going to be coming down here with pitchforks and tar and a rail to come after you guys. So what do? You have the authority under Article 2 of the Constitution. You know what? We screwed up. Michigan, you're in session year round, 12 months out of the year. You could do this next Thursday. You go and say, you know what? We're voting Democrat. Yeah, but we're in the compact. Yeah, screw the compact. The Constitution and the law says we got to vote for the way the people vote. And so you change. And you violate the compact.
Yeah.
Okay, so now these 15 votes that were in the compact are not getting voted. Now they're going to the Democrat the way the people in Michigan did, even though who could sue?
Right.
Who could stop them from doing that? But somebody's going to sue you, and the courts are going to say, oh, yeah, we don't know what to do. So some judge somewhere is going to decide how these votes get picked. And when you guys are signing us up, our state, and we have 5.5 million people get to decide where these 15 votes go, and you're turning that over to 156 million voters across the country that don't have anything to do with Michigan. And when they call you and come down here with pitchforks and boiling tar to go after you for putting us into this thing, you go to fix it by violating the compact. So California sues, who do they sue?
Yeah.
They sue Michigan. What a mess. What a mess. And you thought Bush v. Gore was bad?
Right.
And that's
right.
usually when the Democrat lawmakers, oh gosh, look at the time. Thanks for stopping in.
Right.
I gotta go. And I find out, a week later that he's a no vote. And so it's been that kind of an argument with those guys. But all right. Again, the guys that save our states do a lot more of that. But it's been an interesting thing. So
all right. Then with all that being said, I think we did a pretty damn good job at covering everything. So before we close, I want to zoom out one final time. John, throughout this conversation, we've talked about the federalism, minority protections, the structural design, but beneath it all is a deeper philosophical question. The United States was designed as a constitutional republic, not a direct democracy. In your view, what is the fundamental difference between a republic and a direct democracy? And when the founding fathers warned about mob rule, what were they actually concerned about? Is a popular vote a step towards pure democracy in the sense that Madison and Hamilton cautioned against?
All of the founders, when you read them, I mean, Hamilton and Madison, I mean, all those guys, Jefferson, even Washington, they, none of them supported popular voting for anything. And all of the states have ratified that thinking. All 50 states have ratified the Constitution. And so they've all agreed with it, and nobody has changed it. There have been 700 attempts to try to change it, but nobody has succeeded in changing it. And so the United States is simply not a popular democracy. And the founders were pretty universal in their opposition to it. Not that the people are stupid, it's just that they're too busy, farming and raising horses and being blacksmiths and hardware store operators and running companies and putting kids in school, to know, what the issues are and who the best people are, for those governing jobs. And so that's what they elected representatives for. Those people can spend the time on those issues and so on and so forth. And they did that on purpose. So the United States has never been a democracy. The states, they didn't ban democracy. The states are free to practice more democracy than the federal government. When they established the federal government is a federation made up of 50 states, authorized by their own people, who authorized the legislature to, join the federation. And we are a federation, and we are a constitutional republic, and we're not a democracy, especially at the federal level. And that's been pretty consistent, since the founding of the United States. So,
Actually, a good example of that is, what are the official names of a lot of the states? You have the Republic of Texas. You have the Commonwealth of Virginia. They're not all Republican states. They are commonwealths. They're democracies. They're republics themselves. But the federal government is what is guaranteed to be the republic.
Yeah, that's correct. Yep. The guarantee clause runs to the state as a benefit to the state, that they will always be able to choose as state entities. And my last testimony to the Michigan legislature, I just said to the House committee I testified before, I said, you folks are the heart, lungs, and the mind and brains of the state of Michigan. You guys make the decisions. You need to think like the state. Don't think like a party. Don't think like the Republicans. Don't think like a Democrat. Your job here is to think like the state of Michigan. And what's in the best interest of the state of Michigan? My argument is giving the control away of our 15 electoral votes. These votes will always be Michigan's votes.
Yep.
What you're doing with the compact is you're giving away the control of who casts the votes.
Yep.
That runs into state constitution problem. Most state constitutions restrict voting to residents of the state. And
Yep.
so national popular vote could run into problems running up against state constitutions too. So but that's a legal argument.
Yep. So John, to wrap things up.
You've run this one out, Jesse.
Yeah. To wrap things up finally, I truly appreciate the depth, the clarity, and seriousness that you have brought to this discussion. You've helped ground our audience in the history and the constitutional principle of the Electoral College. I know we could continue this conversation probably for quite some more time, and there's no shortage of angles to explore. But as we begin to wrap it up for tonight, I want to give you the final word. Is there anything that you would want Americans to understand about what is at stake here?
I think what's at stake is the United States. It's the Federation, the strength of the United States. If you look at like our Mackinac Bridge or any suspension bridge, we got these big cables that go 5.5 miles across the streets of Mackinac, and they're 3.5 feet in diameter. Well, they're made up of wires that are the thickness of pencils. They're about a quarter of an inch or half an inch thick, a quarter of an inch thick. Well, there's thousands and thousands of these wires that are bundled together. And then those bundles are put in bigger bundles, and those bigger bundles are put in bigger bundles, and then they're all wrapped together into one giant cable. Why is that? Because each individual wire bundled together is stronger than if they put a piece of steel going across there. The steel will get brittle, break, and the bridge comes down. Same with the Federation. The Federation's strength comes from all this, the separate strengths of each of the states. Some states are going to have crap years, and other states are going to have golden years, and the years that the states with golden years are in there helping out the states that are having crap years. Some states get hit by hurricanes, and other ones get hit by blizzards and earthquakes and everything in between. And that's the strength of the Federation. The Federation is there to serve as a check against the government that the Federation created. And the states elect the President of the United States. There's never been a decision of any nature whatsoever on any issue at any time decided in this country by national popular vote. We didn't get into any war, and we didn't get out of any war because the population voted for it. And there's 50 different sets of election rules and 50 different sets of domestic laws. My state doesn't have a death penalty. Other states do. Those are differences that have to be recognized. And so the preservation of the Federation, to know that we're a constitutional republic and not a democracy, is very important. The other side is telling everybody we're saving democracy, we're preserving democracy, you are attacking democracy. That is nothing but gaslighting. They do that on purpose to convince the people who don't have the time because they're raising their family to think that we always have been a democracy. We're supposed to be a democracy, but we've gotten away from it. So I'm going to support the people that are going to take us toward that and return us to a democracy. We've never been a democracy or a constitutional republic, but equally important to remember is that we're a federation of states, that the states have a role to play, and that they're the ones, the states are the only ones big enough with enough authority to stand up and tell the federal government to sit down from time to time. And if the states don't do it, we got nothing else. So that's my thing. But saveourstates.com and keepour50states.org are two good websites to get more information.
Yep.
If anybody's got any, you can follow me through the website there too.
Yeah.
On our Facebook group.
All right. So anyone,
Jesse, thanks. Congratulations.
Yeah. Anyone who's watching, if you want to check more out, please check out Save Our States and
Keep Our 50 States.
Yeah, Keep Our 50 States. Check out their website. Look into John Crawford. Great mind, really knows his stuff on the Constitution. John, thank you again for coming on this evening. If you'd like to stick on the back end, I'll wrap my side up quickly and join you for just a brief little discussion before we head to bed. But yeah, I truly appreciate your time and insight. I hope we can continue this conversation again in the near future. And I hope you have a good night.
Thanks. I will. You too, Jesse. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Yep. All right. So for the viewers now, I want to make a couple closing statements here. In 1787, as the Constitutional Convention concluded, Benjamin Franklin was asked what kind of government the delegation had created. And his answer was simple: a republic, if you can keep it. That statement was not a celebration. It was a warning. The structure we've discussed tonight, federalism, state sovereignty, minority protections, layered representation, none of it was accidental. It was all engineered, debated, balanced, compromised, and ultimately ratified by the sovereign states. The question before us now is not who wins the next election. The question is whether we preserve the structure that determines how elections are decided. The National Popular Vote Interstate Compact does not amend the Constitution. It does not openly abolish the Electoral College. It works through it. It repurposes it. And if that mechanism succeeds, the character of presidential elections will quietly give way to a consolidated national tally. We were not given a democracy of impulse. We were given a republic of structure. And structure only survives when the citizens understand it and defend it. So learn the system, engage your state legislature, hold the line on constitutional process, because the founders gave us a republic. The rest is up to us. If you found this conversation engaging, informative, please like the episode, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone else who cares about the future of this country. Check out John Crawford, Keep Our 50 States, and Save Our States. And again, if you would like to support this channel, help promote my book, The Last Republican, Thomas Massie and the Death of a Party, this will help continue to fund the channel. It drives deeper into how constitutional limits are being tested in our time, and would really help me reach out to more people. So